Tuesday morning at 7. The kitchen was filled with the bitter aroma of dark roast coffee. Tom placed a white ceramic mug on the island, steam rising from the rim. He slid a thick stack of tax documents in front of me and handed me a blue ballpoint pen. Just do a final check and sign. I'll drop it off at the accountant's on the way, he said, adjusting his dark gray suit tie. I took the pen and uncapped it. The paper felt rough. I flipped to the last page. A single form slipped out from between two pages and landed on the marble countertop. It was an IRS Form 1098, a mortgage interest statement. My eyes stopped on a bold line in the middle of the form. The property address read, 402 Palm Avenue, Coral Gables, Florida. Below that, the borrower names listed too, Tom Miller and Sarah Jenkins. The ownership type next to it read, joint tenancy. I stared at the unfamiliar woman's name. The kitchen ice maker suddenly let out a loud click, and ice cubes dropped into the bin. Tom glanced back at the fridge, then turned to me. What's wrong? Can't find where to sign? He walked over, his finger pointing to the blank line at the bottom right of the form. Just sign here. I gripped the blue ballpoint pen. The tip pressed a small dent into the line. Slowly, I wrote my name, Emily Miller. I gathered all the papers, including the 1098 form, and handed them back to him. Our refund's probably going to be smaller this year, Tom grumbled, stuffing the documents into his black leather briefcase. He came over, bent down, and kissed my forehead. He smelled faintly of mint aftershave. See you tonight. Text me what you want for dinner. He grabbed his car keys and headed toward the garage. The fire door leading to the garage slammed shut. I heard the garage door roll up, then the car engine start, and finally the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. I sat on the bar stool. The coffee slowly cooled. I looked at the mug on the marble counter, reached out, and pushed it next to the sink. I stood up and walked to the second floor. The hallway carpet was soft, silent. I pushed open the master bedroom door and went to the back of the walk-in closet. From the top shelf, I pulled down a black canvas duffel bag. I unzipped it and packed 3 white cotton t-shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, and a gray hoodie. I went into the bathroom, grabbed a new toothbrush and a travel-sized tube of toothpaste, and tossed them in. I zipped the bag. I walked to the vanity, opened the bottom drawer, and took out my passport and an old checkbook. I stuffed them into my jeans pocket. I went downstairs, slipped on my worn-out sneakers, grabbed my car keys, and locked the front door. I got into my Honda sedan, started the engine, shifted into reverse, and drove out of the neighborhood, onto the highway leading to the airport. Traffic was heavy. A red truck stayed in the lane to my left. I held the steering wheel with both hands, my eyes fixed on the road sign ahead. It read O'Hare International Airport. The radio played loud rock music. I reached out and turned the volume knob to 0. The cabin was left with only the sound of tires on the road. After parking in the long-term lot, I walked to the ticket counter with my black duffel bag. A one-way ticket to Miami. The next available flight. I handed my credit card to the agent behind the counter. Boarding in 2 hours. Gate B14. She handed me a boarding pass. I went through security, walked to gate B14, and sat on a metal chair by the window. I watched ground crew loading luggage onto the plane outside. 2 hours passed, and the announcement called my boarding group. I lined up, had my ticket scanned, and entered the cabin. I found my seat, buckled my seatbelt, and closed my eyes. The plane landed. I walked out of the airport. The Florida afternoon sun was blinding, the air thick with humid heat. I went to the rental car counter and rented a gray Ford sedan. Sitting in this unfamiliar car, the steering wheel was scorching hot. I turned on the air conditioning and set the fan to max. I typed an address into my phone's navigation app, 402 Palm Avenue. A blue route appeared on the screen, 35 miles away. I mounted the phone on the holder and pressed the gas. The car drove into a quiet, upscale neighborhood. Tall palm trees lined both sides of the road. Lawns were meticulously trimmed. Automatic sprinkler systems were running in every yard, water spraying onto the asphalt. I slowed down. My eyes scanned the house numbers. 398, 400, 402. I parked my car on the side of the road, 2 houses down from 402. The house was big, 2 stories, painted pure white. The yard was filled with large pink bougainvillea. A brand new silver Mercedes sports car sat in the driveway, with a yoga studio sticker on the trunk. I rolled down my window. The air smelled like sea salt and weed killer. The white door of 402 opened. A woman stepped out. She had beautiful long blonde hair, wearing a yellow sundress and flip-flops. She walked to the porch, bent down, and picked up an Amazon cardboard box. She glanced at her phone, and a big smile spread across her face. Holding the box with one arm, she turned and walked back inside, the door closing behind her. I stared at that white door for a long time. A breeze rustled the palm leaves along the street. I turned my head. My eyes landed on the house directly across from 402. That was 403. It was a small, single-story blue house with overgrown grass in the yard. A wooden sign was stuck in the grass next to the front door with red English letters. For rent, fully furnished. A phone number was listed below. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number. The phone rang 3 times. A man answered. Hello. I saw the sign in front of 403. I want to rent the house. I said, looking at the sign. Oh, great. When would you like to see it? I can tomorrow. I'm outside right now. I cut him off. I need to move in today. I'll pay 3 months' rent in cash as a deposit. There was a few seconds of silence on the other end. All right. Give me 10 minutes. I'll bring the keys. Thanks. I hung up. I sat in my gray Ford, staring at the white house across the street. The sprinkler system was still rotating back and forth. I pulled my black duffel bag onto the passenger seat and waited quietly. The landlord placed a key with a brass keychain into my palm. I closed the blue front door of 403 behind me. The house smelled like old carpet cleaner. I tossed my black duffel bag onto the beige fabric sofa. I walked to the kitchen, turned on the faucet, and washed my hands. I pulled out my phone and checked the map. A large chain supermarket was 2 miles away. I grabbed my car keys and headed out. At the supermarket, I pushed a cart and picked up flour, butter, and chocolate chips. Then I went to the garden section. Tom is severely allergic to ragweed pollen. If he even catches a whiff, his eyes get red and watery, and his throat breaks out in hives. I picked out 2 blooming ragweed plants and dropped them into the cart. Next, I bought a large, top-quality bone-in ribeye steak. In Chicago, Tom only eats this cut, and he insists on marinating it with coarse salt and black pepper for a full 12 hours. Finally, I grabbed a pack of blank invitation cards from the stationery aisle. I loaded everything into the trunk. Back at 403, I placed the 2 ragweed plants on either side of the front porch steps, right in the path of the wind. I turned on the oven and set the temperature. I cut the butter into small pieces, mixed it with flour, and stirred slowly with a wooden spoon. The chocolate chips melted into the dough. I divided the cookie batter into small portions, placed them on a baking sheet lined with foil, and slid it into the oven. 30 minutes later, the house was filled with the rich smell of chocolate. I packed the baked cookies into a clear glass dish. On an invitation card, I wrote, Saturday at 5 p.m., 403 housewarming barbecue. You're welcome. I signed it with my name, Emily. I carried the dish, pushed open the door, and crossed the asphalt road. The heat from the pavement seeped through the soles of my shoes. I walked up to the white door of 402 and rang the bell. The door opened. Sarah stood there in her yellow sundress. She smelled strongly of vanilla perfume.
Eat.
I held the dish out. I just moved in across the street at 403. I baked some cookies. Sarah's eyes lit up. She took the dish. Oh my gosh, thank you. It smells amazing.
I'm Sarah. I'm me.
I pointed to the card. I'm planning a barbecue in my yard on Saturday afternoon. Hope you can come. That sounds wonderful. Sarah smiled brightly, showing her perfect white teeth. My fiancé is flying in tomorrow night to spend the weekend with me. He'll love a barbecue. His favorite is bone-in ribeye steak. I nodded. I'll make sure to have plenty of meat. Sarah leaned against the doorframe. My fiancé works in Chicago and is usually very busy. We rarely go out on weekends, so this party will be a great way for him to relax. Chicago is cold. The weather here will suit him perfectly, I said. We waved goodbye to each other. I turned and walked back to 403. Friday night. The streetlights came on. I sat in the shadows of the living room in 403. I didn't turn on the lights. Through the gaps in the blinds, I stared at the white door across the way. At 8:10 p.m., a black rideshare car pulled into the driveway of 402. The door opened. A man in a dark gray suit stepped out. He carried a black leather travel bag. He walked to the trunk and pulled out a large bunch of red roses. It was Tom. The door to 402 opened immediately. Sarah ran out barefoot, jumped up, and wrapped her arms around Tom's neck. Tom set down the travel bag, held Sarah's waist with one hand, and leaned in to kiss her. He stuffed the roses into Sarah's arms. The two of them walked into the house, arms around each other's waists. The white door closed. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Tom's name flashed on the screen. I stood up and walked into the bathroom. I turned on the shower head, and the water crashed against the plastic tub floor with a loud roar. I pressed the answer button. "Hey," I said into the phone. "Sweetheart, I just got to the hotel in New York." Tom's voice came through the receiver. The background was quiet, no wind at all. "I had 3 meetings in a row today."
I'm exhausted.
"How's the weather in New York?" I asked. "A little rainy."
Cold.
Tom paused. "Are you taking a shower?"
Yeah.
"Just put the clothes in the washer." I looked at my own face in the mirror. "Get some rest early." "You too. Love you." Tom hung up. I turned off the faucet. The bathroom fell silent again. I walked out of the bathroom and back to the window. The light in the master bedroom on the second floor of 402 was on. Saturday morning at 9. I was rubbing sea salt onto a steak in the kitchen. My phone screen lit up. It was a text from an unknown number. "Emily, it's Sarah. Want to come over for coffee? I have a few things to show you." I set down the glass jar of salt. I washed my hands, tore off a paper towel, and dried them. I pushed open the door and walked across. Sarah pulled open the door and grabbed my wrist, leading me into the living room. I stood in the entryway. Under my feet was an expensive Persian rug. In the center of the living room sat a set of Italian imported white leather sofas. Above my head hung a massive crystal chandelier. The stair railing to the second floor was all solid carved wood. All this money was taken from the joint account. Sarah pulled me over to sit on the sofa. She pulled a thick wedding dress catalog from under the coffee table. "Next month we're going to try on wedding dresses. What do you think of this one with lace?" She flipped open a page. On her finger was a huge emerald-cut diamond ring. The ring sparkled green under the light. "That ring is beautiful," I said, staring at her hand. "Tom gave it to me last month," Sarah said, touching the diamond. "He's always had good taste." I reached out my finger and touched the cold glass surface of the coffee table. Suddenly, the sound of a door opening came from the second floor. Then heavy footsteps on the solid wood stairs. "Sarah?" Tom's voice came down from the stairwell. His voice was hoarse, just waking up. "Did you see my razor?" I sat on the sofa, my back facing the stairs. My hands rested flat on my thighs, palms against the rough denim fabric. Sarah stood up and walked toward the stairs. "It's on the guest bathroom sink. Come down. Our new neighbor Emily is here for coffee." The footsteps stopped on the last step of the stairs. "New neighbor." Tom's voice grew closer. I slowly stood up. My gaze was level with the landscape painting on the wall ahead. I turned around to face the stairway. Tom was wearing a gray cotton pajama set, his hair messy. He held an electric razor in his hand. His eyes traveled over Sarah's shoulder and landed on my face. His hand froze midair. The razor let out a faint buzzing sound. The muscles around his mouth twitched. His eyes widened suddenly, bloodshot. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down, letting out an almost inaudible gulp. Sarah walked to the kitchen to pour coffee, completely oblivious to us. "Emily brought over homemade cookies yesterday, and we're going to barbecue in her yard this afternoon." Tom stood still. The razor slipped from his hand and hit the wooden floor with a dull thud. The plastic casing cracked open. I looked into his eyes, stretched the corners of my mouth upward, and pulled out a standard smile.
Good morning, Tom, I said.
Nice to meet you. Tom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. His hands hung at his sides, his fingers gripping the seams of his pajama pants. Sarah walked out of the kitchen carrying 2 cups of coffee. She set them on the coffee table and turned to look at Tom. Why are you so pale?
Didn't sleep well last night?
Tom's gaze was fixed on my face. He took half a step back, his back bumping against the wooden railing of the stairs.
Tom
let out a dry, single syllable. I might be coming down with a cold. Then you should drink more hot water. I picked up the coffee cup from the table and took a sip. Make sure to come to the barbecue party this afternoon. I prepared your favorite bone-in ribeye steak. Tom's breathing became extremely rapid. His chest heaved violently. He bent down, picked up the cracked razor on the floor, and turned to flee up the stairs. The master bedroom door slammed shut. Sarah looked up at the stairs with confusion. He's usually not this clumsy. It's fine. I set down my coffee cup. Men always have their own pressures. See you this afternoon. I walked out of apartment 402. The sunlight outside was blinding. I crossed the street and walked back to 403. On my front porch, the 2 pots of ragweed swayed in the breeze, releasing fine pollen. I pushed open the door and walked to the backyard. I pulled off the grill cover. I took out a bag of charcoal and poured it into the bottom of the grill. I turned on the black portable speaker and set the volume to medium. Blaring country music guitar filled the air. I took out the glass bowl filled with sea salt and black pepper. The red steak oozed blood in the bowl. I picked up the long-handled tongs and flipped the steak over. The coarse salt grains scraped against the metal tongs, making a faint rustling sound. I went back to the living room and pulled the cord of the blinds. From this angle, I could clearly see the second-floor window of 402. The master bedroom curtain was pulled open just a crack. I knew a pair of eyes was watching me from behind that gap. I walked to the refrigerator and took out several bottles of ice-cold beer. I opened one with a bottle opener and took a big gulp. The cold liquid slid down my throat into my stomach. My phone vibrated again. The screen showed a new message. The sender was Tom. What exactly are you trying to do? I looked at the message. I typed a few words on the screen with my thumb. The barbecue party starts at 5 o'clock sharp. Remember to bring your sick body. I pressed send. I tossed the phone onto the sofa. I turned around and picked up a sharp kitchen knife, starting to chop onions on the wooden cutting board. The blade cut through the purple skin of the onion, and the pungent juice splashed onto my fingers. I chopped again and again, until the pile of onion pieces covered the entire board. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I stood in the backyard of 403. The lawn had just been mowed, and the air was mixed with the smell of grass and weed killer. I set up a white umbrella in the middle of the lawn. Under the umbrella was a rectangular wooden table. On the table were a stack of white paper plates, a pack of plastic forks and knives, and 2 large bowls of potato salad mixed with mayonnaise. The black portable speaker sat on the brick platform next to the grill. I pressed the power button. The speaker emitted a low startup sound. I placed my phone next to it, connected via Bluetooth, and opened a music playlist called Country Road. The guitar sound immediately filled the entire yard. Neighbors began to trickle in. David, the retired old man living on the corner, brought a case of beer. The young couple from 401 carried a plate of grilled corn. Everyone greeted each other. I stood behind the grill, using the long-handled tongs to place the bone-in ribeye steaks on the wire rack. The fat dripped onto the red-hot charcoal, sending up thick, white smoke. 5:15 in the afternoon. The white wooden gate pushed open. Sarah walked in with Tom on her arm. Sarah had changed into a red floral sundress with spaghetti straps and wedge sandals. Her hair was carefully styled with a curling iron. Tom wore a light blue linen long-sleeve shirt paired with khaki casual pants. He kept his head down, walking slowly. The back of his shirt was soaked through, the fabric clinging to his spine. His forehead was covered in large beads of sweat. Emily. Sarah let go of Tom's arm and waved at me. She walked over quickly. Oh my God, the steak smells amazing. Tom loves this the most. I nodded, picked up a brush, and brushed a layer of barbecue sauce onto the steak. Grab a seat anywhere. Drinks are in the red cooler. Sarah turned around and waved at Tom. Honey, come get a drink. Tom stood by the wooden gate. His eyes were fixed on the stone path on the lawn. He slowly moved his legs, walked to the cooler, and took out a can of soda. Without saying a word, he turned and walked to the folding chair in the farthest corner of the yard and sat down. That spot was the farthest from the crowd and the farthest from the grill. Sarah seemed very happy. She held a glass of red wine, walked over to old Mr. David, and started chatting loudly. Yeah, we're getting married soon. Tom has a big company in Chicago, and he's always super busy with work. He bought this house for me. It's going to be our vacation home. Sarah's voice was loud enough to drown out the music from the speakers. I flipped the steak over with the tongs. The meat around the bone had turned a charred brown. Tom was sitting in the corner. He set his soda can on the grass by his feet. He pulled his phone out of his pants pocket, his fingers tapping rapidly on the screen. My phone was sitting next to the speaker. The screen lit up. It was a text message from Tom. Stop the circus right now. Come out and see me. I ignored it. I picked up the tongs, grabbed 2 grilled sausages, and put them on an empty plate. Tom looked up, staring at me through the crowd. His chest was heaving. He lowered his head again and jabbed at his phone screen. My phone screen lit up again. Name your price. Just don't say anything stupid. I grabbed a rag and wiped the grease off my hands. Tom was getting really agitated. He stood up and paced back and forth in the corner. He turned his back to the crowd and pressed the phone to his ear. He wanted to call me. He wanted to see how I'd react. The black portable speaker was sitting on the brick counter next to me. It was the same brand we used to use back in Chicago. Tom's phone's Bluetooth pairing was still saved in it. Tom's phone had just come within the automatic Bluetooth range. Suddenly, the guitar strumming from the speaker stopped. The music cut off so abruptly that everyone in the yard turned to look at the grill. Sarah shut her mouth too. The whole backyard went dead silent. All you could hear was the crackling of the charcoal. The black speaker let out a single electronic beep. Then a clear dial tone, beep beep, came out of the speaker. It was the sound of a phone dialing. Tom spun around. He froze in place, his eyes locked on the speaker on the brick counter. He immediately pulled the phone away from his ear, gripping it with both hands, his thumbs frantically swiping across the screen. He wanted to hang up. He wanted to disconnect the Bluetooth. His fingers were shaking badly. Sweat dripped onto the screen, making it unresponsive. Damn it. Tom muttered under his breath. He lunged forward, trying to rush to the grill and yank the speaker's power cord. He wasn't watching where he was going. His dress shoe caught on a black extension cord connected to the speaker. Tom lost his balance and hit the ground hard. His knees and palms scraped across the rough stone patio with a dull thud. The phone flew out of his hand and landed in the dirt 2 meters away. Right then, the call connected. A man's voice boomed out of the huge speaker, vibrating through the air in the yard. Tom, can you hear me? It's Kevin. Kevin was our tax accountant. His voice, amplified by the speaker, sounded jarringly loud. Sarah stepped forward. She looked at Tom sprawled on the ground, then at the speaker in the distance. Tom, who are you calling? Tom pushed himself up on his hands, desperately trying to get up and grab the phone. Kevin's voice kept coming out of the speaker, fast and clearly anxious. Tom, you need to give me an explanation right now. I just got an email notification from Emily. She's locked down all your joint marital accounts at Chase Bank. Even the breeze seemed to stop in the yard. Old Mr. Davis stood frozen, holding a half-empty bottle of beer. Tom's body jerked. He gave up on getting the phone and just slumped onto the grass. His blue shirt was smeared with black mud. The smile completely vanished from Sarah's face. She glanced at Tom, then turned to stare at the speaker. The account freeze is just part of it. Kevin's voice echoed across the backyard. That 1098 form is a huge problem. Emily is refusing to sign off on the tax documents for the Florida property. What are you doing, Tom? Who is this woman named Sarah Jenkins? Why are you putting a stranger's name as a joint owner on a house you paid the down payment for with marital assets? The sound of paper rustling came through the speaker. If Emily reports you to the IRS for hiding your marriage and transferring assets, you could lose your company. The backyard was dead silent. The wine glass in Sarah's hand tilted. The purple-red liquid spilled onto her red floral dress, leaving a big stain. The glass slipped and hit the grass with a dull thud. She slowly turned her head and looked at Tom. Marital. Joint property. Sarah's lips trembled, her voice barely a whisper. Tom sat in the dirt. His mouth hung slightly open, his eyes unfocused. His hands rested limp at his sides, nails caked with mud. He gasped for breath, his face deathly pale. I set down the metal tongs. Walking over to the red cooler, I bent down and pulled out a fresh bottle of ice-cold beer. I aimed the bottle cap at the edge of the nearby iron rack and smacked it hard. The metal cap flew off, spinning a few times on the brick counter. I raised the bottle and took a long gulp. The cold liquid slid down my throat. Turning around, I looked at Tom sitting on the ground, then at Sarah standing nearby. I stepped forward, past the grill, and stood between them. Tom, I said in a very steady voice, Kevin is waiting for your answer.
Tell him who Sarah is.
Sarah stared fixedly at the dirt on the ground. The glass of red wine slipped from her hand. It shattered against the bluestone tiles with a sharp crack. Purple-red liquid splashed onto Sarah's calves, trickling down her skin into her high-heeled sandals. Tom sat in the muddy pit. He opened his mouth, his throat emitting heavy, ragged breaths. He tried to stand, but his palms kept slipping on the wet mud. From the black Bluetooth speaker, Kevin's voice grew louder. All Chase Bank supplementary cards have been suspended. The 2 transfer requests this morning were also blocked by Emily. Tom, are you listening to me? Sarah whipped her head around. Her gaze locked onto me over the grill. I picked up a white dry towel and slowly wiped the barbecue sauce off my fingers. Sarah's chest heaved violently. She fully grasped the situation now. No funds. No credit cards. No cash available under Tom's name. She glanced down at Tom. He had just pushed himself halfway up with his hands. The front of his light blue shirt was smeared with black mud, his belt buckle dripping with dirty water. Without hesitation, Sarah turned around. Lifting the hem of her red floral dress, she ran toward the yard's exit. Her high heels clacked rapidly against the stone path. Sarah, where are you going? Tom roared. He scrambled to his feet, stumbling after her out the wooden gate. The neighbors in the yard fell completely silent. Old Mr. David stood under the umbrella, beer bottle in hand. The young couple from Unit 401 set their plates on the wooden table and leaned forward to watch. I picked up the long-handled tongs and flipped 2 sausages on the grill. Grease dripped onto the glowing charcoal, sending up a puff of white smoke. I walked around the grill and stepped out of Unit 403's yard. Standing at the edge of the road, I looked at the white villa across the street. Sarah ran through the gate of Unit 402, not even bothering to close it. Just 30 seconds later, she burst out. A huge brown leather bag hung from her right shoulder, and she clutched a car key tightly in her hand. Tom reached the driveway. Gasping for air, he spread his arms wide, blocking the front of the silver Mercedes sports car. Give me the keys. Tom yelled at the top of his lungs, reaching out his muddy right hand to grab what Sarah held. Sarah didn't slow down at all. She charged straight for the driver's door. Get out of the way. You fraud. The car is still on loan. Where are you taking it? Tom lunged forward, grabbing Sarah's left arm. Sarah yanked her arm hard. The heel of her shoe scraped a white mark across the concrete driveway. Let go of me. Sarah swung the heavy bag with her free hand, slamming it into Tom's shoulder. The thick metal zipper head struck his collarbone. Tom doubled over in pain, his grip loosening slightly. Sarah seized the chance to break free. She pressed the unlock button on the key. The silver car's lights flashed twice, with a crisp chirp. Sarah pulled open the heavy door and quickly slid into the driver's seat. Tom lunged at her. He grabbed the edge of the door with both hands, trying to wrench it open and drag her out. Sarah sat in the driver's seat and lifted her right foot. She drove the heel of her sandal hard into Tom's chest. Tom's feet slipped. His leather shoes, already coated in mud and water, had no traction on the smooth concrete driveway. He fell backward, crashing heavily onto the ground. His back hit the pavement with a dull thud. Sarah pulled the door shut. With a click, it locked from the inside. Tom rolled over on the ground and scrambled up, rushing to the driver's window. He pounded on the bulletproof glass with his muddy hands. "Open the door. Stop the car," Tom shouted, pressing his face against the window. Sarah sat behind the steering wheel without even turning her head. She quickly started the engine. The sports car roared loudly, and the exhaust pipes at the rear shot out a blast of hot air. Tom kept pounding on the window, but Sarah just threw it into reverse and floored the gas pedal. The sports car shot backward. The tires screeched against the pavement, kicking up a cloud of acrid white smoke. The force of the car's backward motion knocked Tom over, and he rolled twice across the driveway. He lay on the ground, watching helplessly as the Mercedes sports car backed out of the driveway and cranked the wheel hard onto the street. Sarah shifted into drive. The car let out a roar, and it accelerated toward the community gate, disappearing at the end of the road. In just a few seconds, the street was left with nothing but the pungent smell of burnt rubber. Tom lay on the ground. His dark gray casual pants were now completely black. His hair was a mess, plastered against his cheeks. His mouth hung open as he gasped in the hot air. I turned and walked back to the backyard of 403. I picked up a white paper plate from the wooden table and put 2 grilled sausages on it. I walked over to the black canvas bag on the sofa. I unzipped it and pulled out a yellow manila envelope. With the paper plate in my left hand and the envelope in my right, I slowly crossed the asphalt road. The surface was radiating intense heat. I reached the driveway of 402. Tom had just rolled over and was now sitting on the ground. His hands hung limply by his legs, the backs covered in red scrapes. I stopped in front of him. I bent down and placed the paper plate with the sausages on the ground by his feet. "Eat something?" I said, looking at him. Tom slowly lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot. He glanced at the paper plate on the ground, then looked up at my face. His chin was trembling. I tore open the yellow manila envelope. I pulled out a folded A4 printout. That IRS Form 1098, the mortgage interest statement. The same one I had looked at in the kitchen this morning. Underneath that form was a lawyer-drafted quitclaim deed. When I was in Chicago, I had already signed the spousal waiver section of that deed and had it stamped with the notary's red seal. I bent down and laid the document flat next to the white paper plate. I've already filed a unilateral fraudulent diversion of marital assets claim with Chase Bank for the down payment on this house. Kevin is processing the refund of that down payment, I said, standing up straight and looking down at Tom. Now, the title to this house, along with the massive commercial mortgage, belongs entirely to you and Sarah. Tom's eyes fell on the document on the ground. He saw my signature. Sarah took the car. She'll sell it to a used car dealer for cash and then disappear completely from your life. I continued in a steady voice. You'll be the one paying the $9,000 monthly mortgage on your own. Tom's hands gripped the fabric of his pants tightly, mud squeezing out between his fingers. I packed up all your personal clothes and left them outside the gate in Chicago. A second-hand pickup service will come by tomorrow to take them away. I turned my back to him. Have a nice time in Florida, Tom. I walked back to the yard at 403. The neighbors watched me quietly. I went to the grill, picked up the tongs, and continued flipping the steaks on the wire rack. Sunday morning, I sat on the wooden steps of the porch at 403, holding a cup of black coffee. Across the street at 402, the white front door was wide open. Tom was bent over, gripping one corner of that huge white Italian leather sofa. He was pulling it out with effort. The wooden feet of the sofa scraped loudly against the floor of the entryway. He dragged the heavy sofa out onto the lawn. His light blue shirt was completely soaked with sweat, clinging to his back. He turned and went back inside, bringing out a glass coffee table, a few metal bar stools, and a pile of designer suits. He piled all of it at the edge of the lawn. He walked to the garage door and grabbed a piece of discarded cardboard. With a black marker, he wrote a few bold words, "Garage sale." He stuck the cardboard at the entrance of the driveway. Tom rubbed his stomach. He went to the copper garden faucet, turned it on, bent down, and cupped his hands to drink the water. Yesterday afternoon, Chase Bank had frozen all his cards. He didn't even have cash for a hamburger now. The hefty mortgage from that 1098 form, along with the property taxes on this house, would soon trigger a warning for automatic payment failure. If he didn't cover the account, he'd face credit bankruptcy. The sun rose. The asphalt on the road started to heat up. The air was filled with the smell of weed killer. Old Mr. David walked slowly down the driveway to 402, holding the leash of a golden retriever. Two other retired neighbors from the corner followed behind him. Tom immediately straightened up. He smoothed his wrinkled collar, forced a smile, and walked over to David. "Good morning, David." Tom pointed at the white leather sofa. "Genuine Italian import. Originally $8,000. If you like it, I can sell it to you for $1,000. Old Mr. David let go of the leash. The golden retriever walked over to the sofa, lifted its hind leg, and urinated on the edge of the white leather. Yellow liquid ran down the sofa, leg onto the grass. Tom's smile froze on his face. He took a step forward, raised his arm to shoo the dog away, then stopped himself abruptly. $10. Old Mr. David stood with his hands in his shorts pockets, glancing at Tom. Tom's eyes widened, his Adam's apple bobbing. This sofa has no damage at all. $1,000 is already very cheap. $10. Old Mr. David spoke again, his voice steady. It now smells like dog piss. If you don't sell it, I'll call the city sanitation department and report you for dumping large household trash on the community lawn. They'll hit you with a $500 fine. Tom clenched his teeth. The muscles on both sides of his jaw twitched violently. He glanced at the empty street, then back at old Mr. David. Old Mr. David pulled an old wallet from his shorts pocket. With fingers spotted with age, he extracted a crumpled $10 bill and held it out to Tom. Tom slowly extended his right hand. His fingers trembled. He took the bill from David's hand and gripped it tightly. Coffee table, $5. Bar stools, $2 each. The other two neighbors stepped forward and began rummaging through Tom's pile of designer suits. They yanked the custom-tailored jackets out and tossed them on the ground. Mud-caked shoe soles trampled directly over the expensive fabric. Tom stood still. His eyes were open, watching as black footprints were stamped onto the collars of the suits. He didn't reach out to stop them. His arms hung stiffly at his sides. A red pickup truck pulled up. The neighbors left a few $1 bills and a handful of coins, then loaded the sofa and coffee table into the truck bed. The pickup drove off, belching black smoke. The area fell quiet again. The grass on the lawn was pressed flat in yellowed patches where the heavy items had sat. Tom walked over to the driveway, picked up an overturned red plastic bucket, and sat down on it. He opened his tightly clenched right hand. The bill was completely soaked with sweat. He pulled all the change from his other pocket and laid it out on his lap. One $10 bill, 6 $1 bills, and a small handful of silver coins. He used one finger to separate the coins one by one. He swallowed. He looked down at the money in his hands. I stood up, placed my empty coffee cup on the step, and walked down the stairs. I crossed the hot asphalt street, step by step, until I stood in front of Tom. Tom looked up. His lips were cracked and peeling with white skin. His eyes were bloodshot, his sockets deeply sunken. A layer of stubble had grown on his chin. On his left wrist was a silver Rolex watch. I had bought it for him with the first trust fund my parents left me the day after I signed that marriage certificate. I need money to buy some food. Tom looked at me, his voice hoarse, barely audible. I pulled 2 quarters from my jeans pocket. The coins gleamed silver in my palm. I extended my right hand, palm up, take off the watch. I looked him in the eye, calmly. Tom followed my gaze, looking down at his left wrist. He jerked his left hand behind his back, fingers gripping the metal band tightly. This watch is worth $20,000. You want to take it for 50 cents? You can't even afford a $2 loaf of bread. I kept my hand extended, not backing down. That 1098 form debt will show up on your credit report tomorrow. This watch won't even be worth 50 cents by then. Tom's chest heaved violently. He gasped for air, a gurgling sound coming from his throat. He looked up at the closed blue door of 403 across the street, then turned to look at the empty white villa behind him. Slowly, he brought his left hand out from behind his back. With his right hand, he unclasped the metal buckle. The watch slid off his wrist. A pale mark remained where the watch had always sat. Tom placed that Rolex watch in my palm. The metal case still held the warmth of his skin and his sweat. I tossed the 2 coins into a rusty tin can at his feet. The coins hit the metal with a sharp clink. I grabbed the watch. I turned around and walked across the street, stepping on the hard concrete driveway. I zipped up the black canvas bag. The metal zipper pulls clacked together with a crisp sound. I placed the key with the brass keychain in the center of the dining table. I took out my phone and opened the ride-hailing app. I entered Miami International Airport as the destination. The screen showed it was searching for nearby drivers. I slung the canvas bag over my shoulder and pushed open the blue door of apartment 403. A wave of heat hit me in the face. I closed the door behind me with my hand. The wooden door made a dull thud. I walked to the edge of the road. The asphalt was softened by the sun. The soles of my shoes felt sticky against it. My phone vibrated. A ride request popped up on the screen. The driver's name was Thomas. The vehicle info showed a gray used Toyota sedan. He was still half a mile away. I stood there looking down the street. 3 minutes later, a gray Toyota with chipped paint on the hood turned into the neighborhood. The car crept along, its exhaust pipe sputtering with a worn-out sound. A layer of dust coated the windows. The Toyota stopped in front of me. The passenger window rolled down slowly. Tom sat in the driver's seat. He wore a cheap yellow fluorescent vest over the same smelly light blue shirt from yesterday. His hair was plastered to his scalp like a mess of weeds. Dark circles hung under his eyes. He turned his head, his gaze crossing the passenger seat, landing on the black canvas bag in my hand, then moving up to my face. Tom's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. His shoulders hunched up. He looked down at the phone screen fixed to the air vent. The screen showed the passenger's name, Emily. Tom extended his right index finger, hovering it over the red "Cancel Order" button on the screen. His finger trembled badly. I stood quietly outside the car door. I saw a small line of text at the bottom of his screen. If the driver cancels the order without reason, a $5 deposit will be deducted. Tom's index finger paused in midair. He took 2 heavy breaths. The fabric over his chest rose and fell. He slowly withdrew his hand. He pushed open the driver's door and stepped out of the car. Tom walked around the front of the car to the trunk. He inserted a rusty car key into the lock and twisted it hard. The trunk lid popped open with a creaking sound. Inside were a few empty plastic water bottles and a worn-out jacket. I walked to the back of the car. I dropped the black canvas bag full of clothes on the ground. The bag hit the concrete, kicking up a little dust. Tom gritted his teeth and bent over. He grabbed the 2 handles of the canvas bag and lifted it with effort. The bag was heavy. The muscles in Tom's arms tensed, veins bulging on the back of his hands. He held his breath and shoved the bag into the trunk, pushing it all the way to the back. He slammed the trunk lid shut. The sound of metal clanging echoed down the quiet street. I opened the rear door and got into the car. The cabin smelled of cheap air freshener mixed with sour sweat. I closed the door. Tom returned to the driver's seat. He pulled the seatbelt across and clicked the metal buckle into the slot. He shifted into drive and pressed the gas. The car left the neighborhood and merged onto the highway toward the airport. Throughout the ride, no one spoke in the car. Only the robotic female voice from the navigation app announced traffic updates on time. 2 miles ahead, stay in the right lane. I leaned back in my seat. Through the rearview mirror, I could see Tom's eyes. His eyes were fixed on the road ahead, bloodshot. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white. The car's air conditioning was barely working. Only a weak, warm breeze came out. Sweat kept dripping down Tom's forehead, along his cheeks, and onto his yellow fluorescent vest. He didn't even lift a hand to wipe it away. The tires hit a speed bump on the road, and the car jolted violently. Tom's body swayed with it. He bit his lip, but still said nothing. 40 minutes later, The gray Toyota pulled into the departure level of the airport. The terminal was packed with vehicles. The air was thick with exhaust fumes and the smell of rubber. A uniformed airport security guard blew his whistle, directing traffic to move forward. Tom stopped the car in the drop-off zone. He unbuckled his seatbelt and got out. I pushed open the rear door and stepped onto the airport's concrete floor. Tom opened the trunk, grabbed the black canvas bag with both hands, and dragged it out onto the curb. He turned around and looked at me. His chest was still heaving. He parted his dry lips, and his Adam's apple bobbed. I pulled out my phone and opened the ride-hailing app. The order showed as completed. A screen popped up asking me to rate the driver. I reached out my thumb and tapped the first gray star. It turned yellow. A few words appeared next to it. Terrible experience. I scrolled to the bottom of the page, to the tipping option. I tapped custom amount. A numeric keypad appeared on the screen. I pressed 0, then the decimal point, and finally a 1. 1 cent. I pressed the confirm payment button. I looked up and glanced at Tom. He was staring down at his phone, propped up on his air conditioning vent. The screen lit up and a new message popped up. Passenger Emily gave you a 1-star rating and tipped 1 cent. Tom's body went rigid. His hands hung at his sides, his fingers twitching slightly. I turned around and picked up the black canvas bag from the ground. I pulled up the handle on the bag. The plastic wheels rolled across the concrete floor with a rumbling sound. I walked straight toward the automatic glass doors of the terminal. Hey, that gray Toyota. Move it now. No parking here for long. The airport security guard's shout came from behind, followed by a sharp whistle. The glass doors slid open. The intensely cold air conditioning from the terminal hit my face. I stepped inside. I stopped and turned to look back through the door. Tom turned around like a puppet. He slowly pulled open the car door and climbed into the beat-up gray Toyota. The security guard slapped the trunk of his car, urging him on. A puff of black smoke shot out of the exhaust pipe. The gray sedan merged into the heavy traffic and slowly disappeared behind the larger vehicles. I turned back. I followed the huge signs overhead and headed toward the security checkpoint.